Good morning. Welcome to the Project Outcome virtual meeting. This is a follow-up to an in-person workshop we had in Ketchikan in February about Project Outcome, and this is a toolkit from the Public Library Association that helps you measure library programs and services, the outcomes of those services. And this meeting is going to focus on accessing and using survey results. My name is Rochelle Logan. I am the trainer for today, and I am here in Colorado, beautiful Colorado. I have been a trainer for Project Outcome and was on the task force since the beginning in 2013 for Project Outcome. I'm also on the regional trainer for the Research Institute for Public Libraries, RIPPLE, if you have heard about that. We are recording this session today and hope that you get a lot out of this review. The goals for the training today are to get to know how to access Project Outcome survey results, to understand how to communicate with your data, to know how to use survey results to take action, to know how to address challenges you might be facing by implementing Project Outcome. And also, would definitely want you to know what Project Outcome tools are available and how to access additional resources and training if you need them. Some of you have likely started to do some of this work, so our focus today will be on review of key concepts. We had a virtual meeting after the February in-person meeting, and that first meeting back in May was covering survey administration and data entry. And as I said, today is the second of these two virtual meetings. And these are meant to be forums for continued learning, discussion, and support. And of course, we will be talking about using survey results. If you missed the first meeting, it was also recorded and is available through the Alaska State Library, Julie Niederhauser. At the in-person workshop, I shared this roadmap for Project Outcome implementation. This should be a functional guide for you as you administer surveys for the first time. And today, we'll be looking at the last two steps, reviewing results and taking action with your results. So let's get started with a review about accessing your survey results. Project Outcome offers several reporting tools, making it easy to review, interpret, analyze, and share your survey results. The reports include PDF summary report for each survey that you administer. You can also see the raw data in CSV format, and data dashboards showing graphic visualizations of your aggregate survey data. This shows you some of the survey results that are available to you. As I mentioned, you can get the raw data in CSV format that you can then import into Excel, and you can slice and dice it as you wish and sort using Excel. We'll be talking about the report builder, where you can get custom PDF reports, and you can filter those reports by survey topic and the type of survey, and we'll be talking more about what those topics are and the type of surveys. You can also filter by program, date range, and survey name. And then the dashboards are where you can see the overview and more visualization type reports, where you see a matrix and detailed reports with all of the percentages from your surveys and maps of where the locations are on your library map, and of course your information that includes your output information, staffing, etc. So let's talk about what's included in the raw data, the CSV data set. This information is available to you as soon as you start entering data. You don't have to wait until you're completely done with all of the programs. If there's several programs, As soon as you start entering data, you can see these results. This is also where you can find your open-ended feedback from your patrons. And I mentioned during the in-person workshop that the open-ended questions and answers, I should say, are a gold mine. This is where you really can get some great information from your patrons about how they feel about how the library's doing. And all of this is tied back to, if you have branches, to both the branch location and the specific program. In addition to being the place to create surveys and enter data, the survey management tool also gives you access to some of the reporting features. So to locate reports from the survey management tool, find the survey that you want to run a report on. And here you see, as an example, there's 3 different surveys. One's a pajama story time. There's a story time from June 5th. And a toddler sing-along. Those are 3 different surveys that are available to this library. You can download the raw data as a CSV file, as I mentioned, and or there'll be an option to download a pre-made summary report. These reports, as I said, are available as soon as the data has been entered, but we do caution you about running reports mid-cycle and making too many decisions with that data. You download the raw data as a CSV right from the survey management tool. Here is what the data looks like when you download it in CSV format. It includes each individual survey response by each patron, several fields identifying location, program, and survey method, whether you collect the survey in paper or online. And you can view the data in line with the Likert scale responses. That's for the immediate surveys, and multiple choice responses for the follow-up surveys. And here you can see, for instance, on the right side, you could see the outcomes: knowledge, confident, they learned what they used what they learned, and they're more aware of the library's resources. You can see that on these columns, J, K, L, M. And then there is the open-ended responses continuing on. I see Kimberly Baxter. Hello, Kimberly. If you would, in the chat, please just let us know what library, where you're from. Welcome. Let's talk about the report builder. This includes aggregate summary results, program data results, and community talking points. And you can, this can be downloaded again in PDF format. This is all very easy for you to build your reports, and I'm going to get into this a lot in more detail in a moment. And as I mentioned before, you can run the data at any time as the surveys are being collected. So this is a closer look at an example of the customer report for an immediate survey. And this is a bit of a new format from what I showed you in February. It includes overviews with fields populated about the library and response rates. You can see a stacked bar chart there showing the 4 key outcome data for that survey. And there's a summary of the percentage that agreed or strongly agreed with the outcome statement. So you could see that here at the bottom, where you can see 91% learned something that was helpful. You can see that 479 people, that's how many surveys were collected for this particular one. This is all dummy data that was created by PLA, but it helps you to see what the reports will look like. So this includes implications for community impact, and this is gives you some national level research on each of the topics, and a breakdown of the program attendance and response rate by the date of the program. So you see this program was air plants, and the top program had 20 people who attended. 70% of those 20 people actually responded to the survey, and you can see the session date there. These reports are designed for quick sharing with staff and managers, your board. It could be community stakeholders like perhaps someone on city council and that sort of thing. The data is aggregated for each survey created, and multiple program sessions are rolled up into the aggregate data. This is, we're going to take a closer look at the custom report builder, and you can filter your reports by survey topic or type. So survey topics would be something like summer reading. We have 7 topics, and for example, summer reading, we have early childhood literacy. You learned about all of these topics in previous sessions, economic development, job skills, and that sort of thing. And the type of report would be either the immediate report or the, immediate survey or the follow-up survey. So you can filter it by those things, by your program name, by the date range, and survey names. And I'm going to show you more about this. There's an option for libraries to get to the report builder and dashboards from your Project Outcome homepage. This is what the Project Outcome homepage looks like. And you click on Build a Report. The first step in building your report is you pick your library location. So if you are a multi-branch system, this is where you would look at the drop-down and pick your library out of that list. Or you can run a report for all the libraries in your system or district. You select the topic, and again, this one is, there as an example, they're showing summer reading, and then the type. And for summer reading, it's a little different. It's usually the type for every other topic is either an immediate survey or a follow-up survey. For summer reading, your options are adult, teen, or caregiver. So you select what type of report you're running. The third step is to select the date range or the program name or the program name. And whatever you name the program when you created the survey is what's going to appear here. And this is optional. If you want to skip the next few steps, there's always the option to skip straight to the preview. And I'm going to show you what the next few steps are, and you can decide whether you want to use any of these options. Step 4, you select the survey. This is optional again. It's only if you use a unique survey name. In this case, they had a program called Adults Love to Read, and they had a unique survey names of using the date or other things, June surveys, that you can make it more of a unique name, either using dates or sometimes locations in there. You have the option of adding custom narrative that can go at the top of the report, and this is actually very nice. If you are sending this to your board, for instance, and you want to give them a little more information, a little narrative about what this program is and what outcome-based surveys are, it's up to you what kind of statement you might want to put at the top of your report. You're able to add a logo, and preview is the final step where you see the report. You can look at it before you print it. You can make changes. Once you confirm and print where the arrow is pointing there, the report is saved. Then you can access that report, and you can rerun it or edit it at any point. And you can always come back to this page and see all of your past reports. All right. So let's talk about the data dashboard. This is where you go to view aggregate findings and averages. And I will encourage you, Kimberly, if you have any questions along the way, to go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them as we go along. So the data dashboard is where you go to view aggregate findings and averages. And this is beautiful data visualizations that you can get that you don't have to do any number crunching. It is these are auto-generated reports. So as you can see here, this is aggregate data, and you can interact with this data to see different strengths and weaknesses that you might have in your results. And you can sort it. You could see at the top, it might be hard to see on this screen, depending upon how big your screen is today, that you're able to sort it by the survey, by the topic, the type, and that once you've decided what you want to see, then it auto-populates the data into the management tool. And then not only can you see the results, you can hover over whatever of this on the matrix that you want to see something a little more in detail. And in this case, they're hovering over economic development and awareness. And it shows that 3.6, 93% of the people either agreed or strongly agreed that they are more aware of library resources from this economic development programming, all of the economic development programming that this library has done. So once the survey responses are entered into the management tool, it's automatically populated into the dashboard. And this is different than the survey portal that I showed you in February, in that you don't have to wait for the survey fielding dates to end before you can review the data. All the dashboards can be saved as PDF or screenshots that you can insert into your reports. And there's 5 screens for you to view, which I will show you. Here's the main view for the report builder and the dashboards. You can click on any of these, and we're going to go into it. The overview page will show you an aggregate average score across all the survey types and all the 4 outcomes. So you would not see all of these unless you were running every single topic. If you do, let's say you have done surveys for early childhood literacy, and you've also done some job skills programs that you've done some surveys, you would only see early childhood literacy and job skills here. And then you would see the outcomes. It's an aggregate of all the outcomes for those programs. And you can also see the Alaska average for those and the national average they show. The matrix dashboard allows you to explore the data looking for relationships and correlations. And it can also be used to drive decision-making and identify gaps in service or impact. This is an example of one where you can sort results in different ways to change the way the view appears. And again, it shows the economic development and awareness option here. The matrix diagram makes it possible to view aggregate average scores for each survey topic in connection with each outcome. And here you're showing, as you hover over each box, you see the snapshot score on the right. And this information is useful in helping you visually see what areas to focus on for improvement or possibly for advocacy purposes. The detail dashboard gives you the data for each individual survey question, organized by survey. So note the bars are stacked here so that they're centered around neutral. That's that sort of light green color. And the bars shift to the right and are the more positive responses in purple and dark purple, or left in the green, depending upon how positive or negative the responses are. You can also see the national and state, the Alaska comparison average. Results can be filtered down by specific survey or outcome type. And there's also, this is where libraries can filter and export your open-ended responses, which you see on the right of the screen there. To view open-ended responses for a survey, you click on any of the questions for that survey. And the open-ended responses can be really a lot of extremely helpful information for the library, and I encourage you to sit down and read through all of that if you can. The map dashboard allows you to filter by outcome, survey topic again, and to select a custom demographic area like your library service area. And each location, each branch is represented by a dot on the map. And this is a very large system, so there's lots of dots, as an example here. Once you go to a specific location, then several views are available on the left. That includes demographics, economics, education, and health. This data comes from the Digital Inclusion Survey, which pulls from the U.S. Census. Your library information is also available, and it gives you access to data visualization about your library services in general, and it can serve as a nice complement to Project Outcome. Obviously, we're all still collecting outputs. You have to report those outputs and inputs to your state library in your annual report every year. And together with the outputs and outcomes, it makes for a stronger case for libraries. This is where libraries can have all that information in one place in a visually appealing way. And again, it can be printed as a PDF, and it makes for a richer story if you're able to include outputs and outcomes when you're advocating with this information. All right, I'm going to keep going. Let's review some key concepts around communication with your data. We talked about this a bit at the in-person in February, talking about what does it take to reach people. And obviously, we're in a very information-rich environment these days. It helps to think about how to communicate the results of your library. And this graphic gives you a little insight on how the average person receives and processes messages in one day. On average, we get over 2,900 messages in a day. 52 of them might get our attention. 24 we actually read, listen to, or watch. 14 we don't like. And of the remaining 10, we remember 4 of them. So we're surrounded by information, and we have to judge and make decisions about what we internalize. The people you communicate with are the same, but a couple of good points here to remember. This is representative of all messages you see and hear in a day. And I guess the good news is it's a bit different when you're presenting something from the library. That library staff in general are communicating about an organization that people already like and feel good about. There is a Pew research in 2013 that said 91% of people say that they have never had a negative experience using a public library. I like that data. Here are 5 good practices for communicating data, and these practices reduce the effort it takes your audience to understand what you're saying and connect it to their lives. These tips are about removing the small barriers that take mental energy for your audience to process numbers, often without them noticing. They're about making it as easy as possible for your audience to hear what you want them to hear, to remember it later, and care enough to act. The most important practice is to always remember who you're talking to and what they need. There are a few ways to think about this. So what might be impressive for one person and memorable may not appeal to another. So think about your audience. Who do they want to hear the information from? And how to put that information into context. What is your audience likely to be listening for? And how much do they really already know? This includes what they already know or think they know about the community and your library services, and clues they may be listening for about what you want them to do with this information. Let's review a few ways that you could take action using Project Outcome results. 4 key areas where you could use outcome data is when you're advocating for your library, whether it's a casual advocating or you're actually going to your mayor or your legislature with information, justifying requests for funding when you're making program decisions, and when you're talking to community-based partners. The overarching theme here is, what is your goal for outcome measurement? So tips for advocacy, we're going to go into each of those now, are to identify a key message for your advocacy effort. You need to have a key message. And when you're thinking about that message, determine which of the data that you have will help support that message. And very, very important is to create a memorable story. Having a lot of dry data without a memorable story is not going to get you as far as having a personal story and even putting a name to little Tommy came to story time and et cetera, to really make it a memorable story by personalizing it. And you can see there in the bottom left, or right, I should say, that there is the Turning the Page, the resource that PLA has on their website if you wanted to go get more in-depth advocacy training. Here are 3 tips to remember when you look to justify funding requests with outcome measurement data. So think about what the stakeholder priorities are. This ties back to when you select a survey. The more you're able to align your measurement with stakeholder or funder priorities, the easier it will be for the data to justify funding. Think about the gaps in service, or you might have a successful story to tell. You might be looking to identify areas where more funding is needed, where you don't have enough staff to meet demand, or you need more technology or resources in that subject area. And if that's the case, you may look for data that helps identify those gaps in service. Or you may be looking for examples of success just to justify the continuation of funding or to prevent budget cuts to library programming. And your tone, data and tone are important. Choose your language carefully to speak to stakeholders' concerns, and choose data points that really illustrate your points about why funding is needed. When you're thinking about programming decisions, reviewing that open-ended feedback for suggestions is a real boon for you. This can be a great way to get insight into what can be improved. Ask your staff for input, the programming staff. Involve them in the process. They might have insight about, but they can also benefit from reviewing the results and for them to think about what could be improved or changed from what they've read. Think about what areas you can improve. This data presents an opportunity to make improvements based on actual patron feedback, not just gut instinct. Here are a few tips for using Project Outcome to establish community partnerships. You might sit down and think about who are your potential community partners. Once you get to know a little bit more about outcome measurement, for instance, if a goal of the library is to reduce the summer slide among the children in the community, and you have the summer reading outcome data that you can share with the school district, so that is a community partner that you can share the goals and then use the outcome data for your own decision making, and possibly if you share it with your partner, that they can also use it for decision making. And it helps to talk to partners to share the data and create other custom measurement tools if you have that ability to create custom measurement tools. All right, it's time to wrap up. And once again, this was the roadmap I showed you in the beginning today. And you could use this as a path as you go through. You don't have to go back to the beginning each time if you've already implemented your first survey. but you want to be mindful of your planning and scheduling into the future. So, Kimberly, would you like to tell us what your next steps might be after today's meeting? Or Julie?
Well, Rochelle, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just actually on the dashboard, and because we're the state library, we can look and see which libraries have actually ran project outcome surveys, and I'm happy to report that Anchorage and some of our larger libraries are running the surveys, but for some of our smaller libraries, it looks like just getting enough responses is going to be something that's going to take a while, because, you know, I noticed like some of them have, like, they ran a survey and they got 3 surveys returned. Yeah. So I think it's, you know, Alaska's starting slowly, but I think this is being implemented by various libraries. And I really hope that during our upcoming Alaska Library Association conference in Anchorage, that we can have some libraries actually talk about what they've done and kind of encourage more to participate. I noticed on the dashboard, I'm not seeing the individual responses, but maybe you have to export the data to actually see those.
That is not available at the state level.
Oh, okay.
That's only library level.
Okay, so that's only, okay,
yeah.
because that was the one thing I didn't see.
Yeah, I would say when you're worried about how many people actually respond, that it's good to get started with something small and that you think you'll have success at. If you've got some regular people who come into story time, for instance, if you've got 5 people who come to story time and 3 or 4 of them answer the survey, that's a win right there. You know, a lot of libraries just want to get some information and get started. It's obviously better if the more people you can get to answer the survey, you know, however many people are at the program. But I wouldn't let that stop the smaller libraries, to just give it a try. And 3 isn't great. That's true. It depends upon how many people came to the program. But so, Kimberly, have you had very many people actually answer your summer reading program? 14. Okay. So far, so you're just in the middle of it right now. Then that's a good start. Near the end. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I do encourage people to try it and not to be deterred in the beginning. Sometimes patrons get survey fatigue. If you could just tell them it's only 5 questions and it'll take just a couple of minutes, sometimes they will carry on with it. Okay, the Project Outcome website, projectoutcome.org, has other resources available, and as you can see here, they're organized by topic. So you can see getting started is if you are new to this, that's a good place to go, obviously. And you'll find archives of all of our past webinars, including one that is for making sense of survey results, which is what we're talking about today. And that takes a closer look at all the various types of reports and reporting tools in Project Outcome. And you have to be logged in to Project Outcome in order to access these, but they are entirely free. Project Outcome is free, and it will continue to be free. PLA has guaranteed that. There is a peer discussion board that was added to the Project Outcome website, and you can access this from the user homepage. And this really is great. If you have a question as you go along, you can go and ask a question, or you could help others out by responding to their questions. But it's meant to be an easy-to-follow discussion forum. And these are if you need to contact Project Outcome, all of the usual suspects, Facebook and Twitter, and email, info@projectoutcome.org. And I would love to thank you, Julie Niederhauser at the State Library, Alaska State Library, for hosting. And I hope everyone is ready to dig into Project Outcome and really get some good experience with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thanks, Kimberly, for joining us. So we are going to be recording this, and we'll be posting this on our website, and hopefully people who weren't able to attend today can watch it in the future. Thanks, Rochelle. You gave us all the tools and information we need for our libraries to be successful, so we really appreciate the time and effort you put into all of this. So thanks again.
You're welcome.